Hi there, and welcome to this video. I'm Alex Goad, best-selling author, coach, and internet marketing business specialist. And I have a question for you today. Do you ever feel like you've got a whole bunch of stuff going on, but none of it really goes anywhere? Would you like to be able to disproportionately achieve what you want in life by doing less instead of more? Both of those things are possible, and both of those things will also contribute to making your life and the things that you do a lot more fun and a lot more rewarding without putting in more work or spending more time. In fact, while doing less. Sound good? Let's get going. So, this is in the context of my new project called 10x Your Life, and today I want to talk to you about one of the foundational principles of becoming an exceptional doer, of getting things that other people can't have. In other words, of living an exceptional life. One of those principles is truth. How much truth you can tolerate in your life. This is a quote from Goethe, and he says that the amount of truth that someone can tolerate in their life generally determines what they're capable or not capable of. And I really believe that that's true. So the more truth you have, the more truth you can accept and live by, the quicker you can get things done in any sphere imaginable. So, today I want to talk to you specifically about 3 principles of doing that fall into the truth chapter. You know what? Truth is one of the most challenging things because a lot of the things that we believe to be true don't even come from ourselves. We adopt them from the environment, we adopt them from society, we take them from teachers that we've had, parents, and we end up with a bunch of stuff in our head that's not necessarily ours. But then we're very reluctant to get rid of it. Well, that's why exceptional doers have an exceptional relationship with truth. They're able to kind of look at these things and say, hey, if I don't like what this is doing for me, if I don't like what this thought or this belief contributes to my life or this way of doing things, then I'll change it. That's a smart thing to do. So, moving on, the 3 principles of doing. I wanted to talk about this one specifically today because I've seen through coaching hundreds of thousands of people that this is one of the places where almost everybody gets stuck, especially in today's day and age where we're incredibly distracted and we have so many options, so much going on in our lives. And we're on social media and we look at and we see that other people are doing so many incredible things, and then we have the fear of missing out, the fear that we could be doing more and we're not doing it. And so we've got our toes and our fingers and all of these different pools and all of these different things, and it ends up being too much. And what it does is it actually breaks our success mechanism. It breaks our ability to start something and finish it. I'm going to explain to you why and how right now, and I'm going to give you, at the end of this video, 3 things that you can do so that you can radically improve your results. All right, let's get started. The 3 principles of doing. Principle number 1. Principle number 1 is that everything is hardest at the start. And it almost doesn't matter what it is. If you look at it, these principles exist in nature, they exist in mechanics, and they exist in human behavior. Just take the example for this sake of a rocket that's got to get past the stratosphere and into orbit. Well, the biggest amount of fuel is spent right when the rocket takes off because it's got inertia. It needs to get off the ground. So it needs to get 1 inch off the ground, and that's the hardest part. Once it's off the ground, the second hardest part is getting through the Earth's atmosphere because there's the forces of gravity. And then all of a sudden, it's going to travel the rest of its journey, 95%, 98%, 99% of the entire journey is going to be had throughout outer space where there is no gravity, there's no friction, there's no resistance. So things are hardest at the start. And that's really important because when you start a lot of things, you're signing up for hardship. And you've got to keep that in mind. This is all going to come together when we get to the graph section of things, which is going to happen in just 2 minutes. So let's talk about the second principle of doing. The second principle of doing is that results are disproportionate at the end and at the top. Let's take the example of one of the most watched sports disciplines of all, in all countries, is the Olympic 100-meter race for males. Now, it just turns out that's one of the most prestigious and watched events of all. And even then, the second place finisher, the runner-up, almost nobody remembers their name. Almost nobody even notices them, in fact. 5 years, 10 years, 20 years later, they're long gone. Whereas we'll remember the first place finisher. And that's in the most important, most watched sporting event of the entire Olympics. The same thing is true in almost all systems. You know, if you go through 99% of a medical diploma, well, you don't get to be 99% of a doctor. You're either a doctor or you're not a doctor. And it's that last 1%, the completion, that determines whether you get the prestige and the income that comes with that. The same thing if you write a book. You can write an entire 300-page book and have it sitting there on your computer, and until you publish it, first of all, it can't make sales, it can't create influence for you, and you don't even get to brag about the fact that you're an author. Okay, I think you get the idea of disproportionate results at the end. Here's the last example. If there's a plane flying from Dubai to Dallas and it makes the first 99% okay, but the last 1% doesn't happen, it's not a partial success, it's a total disaster. So this is a really important thing to keep in mind, because you see how these two things kind of work together. Hardest at the start, all rewards at the end. So this brings us to principle number 3, which is that partial efforts do not bring partial rewards. They bring partial rewards, but as I was just saying earlier, you can do 98% of the effort and you can get almost 0% of the reward. So it's really important to realize that there's a heck of a large number of things in life that if you start it, you'll get nothing from starting, you'll get nothing from going 2/3 of the way, and you'll get everything from finishing and getting to the end. So I think that's why it's one of Stephen Covey's principles: start with the end in mind. Well, these are 3 principles that in terms of doing things are going to help you do that. Now, all of this comes together here in what I call the quadrants of endeavoring. So there's 4 quadrants of getting things done. This is a really important concept because there's a proverb that says, we are or we become what we repeatedly do. But there's more to it than that. In fact, there might be something that's even more important, and here's what I think it is. It's we become how we repeatedly do. The way that you start something, follow through, and either get to the end or don't get to the end. The way that you experience the hardship, and the way that you either get or don't get the reward, eventually that taints everything that you do, or it inspires everything that you do, and it changes your personality, and it changes you from the kind of person that spends too much time suffering to the kind of person that potentially spends a lot more time doing things that they love and being disproportionately rewarded for it. So let's have a look at how that looks like. Here's where most people are today. They live in this quadrant over here, the first quadrant, the quadrant of mediocrity. I'm not saying that to make anybody feel bad. On the contrary, I'm exposing it so that you can see that if you're not getting the results that you like and you've got a whole bunch of things going on, your life's taking place right here. So, here we have effort, and here we have reward. So, this is the effort line over here. You can see that in the beginning, the effort is disproportionately high, and at the end, the effort is actually quite low. Now, the reward curve is the opposite. In the beginning, there's almost no reward, and at the end, it suddenly skyrockets. The problem that most people experience is that they've got too many marbles in the mediocrity quadrant. So, you got people, they're trying to lose weight, they're trying to start a business, they're trying to write a book, they're trying to learn about real estate, they're trying to develop a better relationship with their wife, they're trying to get more friends, they're trying to keep up with social media, and they're trying to watch all these different TV series. So there's all of this trying, but there's not a lot of succeeding. And that really creates a kind of mindset where, well, look, it's not complicated to figure out. If you live here, it kind of sucks because you have low reward, high effort. I mean, would that inspire you to do more and be more if everything that you do is tainted by this feeling of being difficult and not rewarding? I don't think so. So it's incredibly important to make as much progress towards this quadrant as possible, as quickly as possible, because once you get here, this is where life's good. This is where you get to kind of create masterpieces with minutes of your time and mystify ordinary people with how good you are, how competent, how able. And to you, it actually feels like you're not even doing anything because you're so good at it, it's second nature. So this is the opposite of mediocrity, and it's what I call the Midas touch. So you probably know Midas from the old story. Midas was a king, and whatever he would touch would turn to gold. So that's almost what you get to when you get to mastery. Okay, maybe you have to do a little more than touch it for it to turn into gold, but really, it's pretty close. Okay, now, here's the really key part, is that right down the middle here, there's something I call the golden cross. And this is the line that you want to get across as quickly as possible. Because if you've read The War of Art by Steven Pressfield, you're familiar with the concept of resistance, and you're familiar with the concept of assistance. And when you're on this side of things, there's a tremendous amount of resistance, there's friction. It's difficult, it's hard, it's unfamiliar, it often doesn't feel good. On this side, it's the opposite. You can enter into a state of flow, according to Csikszentmihalyi, that's not easy to say. This is, before you reach the golden cross, you cannot enter into a state of flow. You have to be constantly using tremendous mental effort to egg yourself along. Whereas when you get to this side, all of a sudden you can coast, and the abilities that you already have make it so that you can really enter into the thing that you're doing and get lost in there, and it feels wonderful. Okay, so the golden cross is the moment where everything starts to reverse, where all of a sudden the reward to effort ratio starts to become positive. So until this point, you work like a dog and you get nothing. And after this point, you put in a little effort, you get a lot of reward. And the further you go, the further you can get to a wonderful place called the Midas touch. I wonder, maybe you've heard this story before. It's a story of Picasso, the famous painter. He was in a market, and a woman comes up to him and asks him, "Pablo," she says, "I'm a big fan of yours. I would love it if you could just draw me a quick masterpiece, real quick. You know, don't take a lot of your time. Just make me something quick and beautiful." And Pablo says, "You know what? No problem. I'm happy to do it." So he pulls a little pad out of his pocket and a little pen from the other, and he starts scribbling furiously. And in about a minute flat, he creates a masterpiece. And you can see that really it's got his spirit in there. It's got those eyes, that funny nose, those funny shapes that he's so well known for. And he shows it to the woman, but he doesn't give her the painting. He just shows it to her. And he says, "Here you go. That'll be $1 million." And she's all taken aback. And she says, "How could it possibly cost $1 million? It took you under a minute to do that." And Pablo answers, "It's true that it only took me a minute to do it, but it took me a lifetime to acquire the skill to be able to create a masterpiece in 1 minute." Well, it won't necessarily take you a lifetime to reach mastery or to reach the higher spheres of doing, but it will give you that ability to create what other people consider extraordinary with a very small amount of your time and your effort, which is why it's so rewarding to be here. One last concept before I wrap it up. There's so much talk about passion in the world, about doing things that you're passionate about. And the truth is that most people never really have that passion, and they don't really even understand it, and they have a false notion about it. There's an excellent book by Cal Newport called "So Good They Can't Ignore You." And one of the principles in there is really to say that passion doesn't come first, passion comes second. So here's the recipe for passion. You have to be really good at something, and other people have to recognize you for it. So those are really the two things. Number one, be competent. Number two, have that competence be appreciated by others. And the second that those two things happen, you may find that you're passionate about things that you had no idea about. because we're all wired the same way. We want to be good and we want to be useful. Well, this is where you're both good and useful. So, how do you make use of this information so that it has an impact on your day? How can you use this right now? And I hope that you do. Take a piece of paper and write some of this down. Specifically this, there's 3 steps. Number 1, so 3 things. Number 1, you have to reduce. If you've got a whole bunch of plates spinning, if you have too much on your plate, if you have too much going on, if you feel overwhelmed, if you're trying to keep up and not succeeding, if you're trying to make progress but it's not happening, this is why. It's because you've got so many different marbles here in the mediocrity quadrant. And look, it's totally unrealistic to take all of these things and move them forward towards the Midas touch in one fell swoop at the same time. It's not possible. So, what is possible though is reducing. I would invite you to see, what do you have here that's in the I'm trying. I'm not really that committed, but I'm trying half-heartedly. Maybe because I decided to, maybe because someone else suggested it, maybe because I gave a half-hearted yes to someone that I care about. But you've got all this stuff that you're trying. Write them down. Write them on a piece of paper. Make a list. Make a bulleted list, even better. Make a numbered list. List them by order of importance. Number 1, number 2, number 3. Everything that's not 1, 2, or 3, tear the list off there and put it aside and make a conscious decision that you're not going to focus on it anymore. The moment you get to focus on more stuff is once you get one of your 3 things from here to this side of the quadrant. Okay? So that's number 1 thing to do. Reduce. The number 2 thing to do is to reframe. Okay, so we're so used to saying yes. We're so used to being available all the time for anything that happens. This is kind of the spirit of the new world, but I don't think it's a positive thing at all. What it does is it actually draws us away from and distracts us from what's actually important from us. And it actually even prevents us from discovering what we're really about and what we're really capable of. So if you want more of that, well, number 1, you need to reduce, but number 2, you need to reframe. And here's the new frame. Keep all of these things in mind and keep this in mind, which is don't stuff a bunch of stuff here in the mediocrity quadrant, and realize, have more of a kind of framework whenever you're thinking of engaging yourself in something new, a new project, a new relationship, a new commitment. Put it through this framework first and ask yourself, is this really something that I'm willing to do more than try, that I'm willing to stick with until I move it on this side of things? If the answer is no, then consider leaving it squarely off the table. So that's reframe. And the final thing that you need to do is you need to recalibrate. And recalibrating, that's something that I'm going to be talking about a lot in the next 10 Extra Life videos. It's going to be really it's a question of recalibrating certain parameters in your mind. It's a question of discovering and accepting more truth. I'm not saying, by the way, by any of this that I possess an indelible and ultimate truth that, cannot be contradicted. What I am saying is that the truth may be different for all of us, but what I notice is that every single one of us has a bunch of stuff in our head that doesn't belong to us, and generally speaking, it stops us from making forward progress. I'm sure that you've heard this before, but hey, it's a cliche, but it's true. It's not what you don't know that's stopping you. It's what you do know that just ain't so. And so recalibrating yourself and really having the guts, the courage to look at what's in your mind, what's in your heart, what's in your habit in how you do things, and then making subtle or not so subtle changes to those things. That's what can unshackle you from the unsatisfying life with too much mediocrity that you have now, and allow you to leave behind all that stuff and suddenly start making progress and become a person who's got skill, competence, and a person who can deliver disproportionate value in the world. And isn't that what we're all looking for at the end of the day? To be good, to be useful, and to make something that other people appreciate? I think so, at least. So hey, if you've liked this content and you'd like to get more of it on how to recalibrate and the other principles of how to 10x your life, I would be thrilled to share it with you. So here's how you do it. Enter your name and email in the box below, or just your email depending on what you see there, and I will send you when I have new posts and new content to share with you, which is going to happen pretty much every week from here on. The other thing is, if you've appreciated this content and you can give it a quick share, a quick like, or wherever you see this video, if you can do something to help other people discover it, I would certainly be greatly appreciative, and I think they would be too. So anyways, I am really excited to have been able to share this with you today. Again, I'm Alex Goad, and I'm reminding you, today counts, so behave yourself accordingly. Thanks for watching.